Hi, I'm Irene Sacalano with Osprey Photo Workshops and Tours. This is part 7 of a series of programs on wildlife photography. Today's topic is lenses. We're going to talk about wide-angle lenses like the one that took this photograph, and then we're going to go on to telephoto lenses and macro lenses. Telephoto lenses, we usually think of about 200 millimeter focal length or more for animal photography. They magnify, number one, and they isolate, but they do some other things. They compress apparent distances between foreground and background, and they enlarge the appearance of the background object compared to what we see. So they help contribute to the sense of crowding in a photograph. Also, in the upper image, those two green posts with the heron going in between, those posts are probably 4 feet apart, and yet it looks like he's just barely making it through. Telephotos have a narrow angle of view. This allows you to make slight shifts in camera position and radically change the background. So if you have a background you don't like, move. See if you can get a shadowed background, for instance, behind the subject, as we've had in both of these pictures. If necessary, you may have to darken certain portions of the background in post if it's not perfect. What telephoto lenses are best for what subjects? 500 to 800 millimeter telephotos, or even longer, are typically used for small or distant subjects. For instance, for the series of warblers in the top, and for the gannet and the osprey below that would be at a distance. For larger animals like deer and horses or a group of animals, 2 to 400 millimeter focal length lenses may be adequate to fill the frame. But if photographing dangerous animals, I'm careful. I'd like to use a 400 millimeter lens or longer because subjects like bison can run fast, bears can attack, and animals during rutting season could be quite aggressive. Other facts about telephoto lenses. There are ones that are called fast lenses. They have a larger than normal maximum aperture or lens opening, making it possible to use faster shutter speeds to freeze action or capture sharp images in low light situations. However, they do cost more. Long focal length lenses magnify a lot. Therefore, they lead to shallow depth of field, which could be good in terms of softening the background behind the subject, particularly if the background's far enough away, or help separate the subject from the background. However, they can cause problems, particularly if you have a group of animals and you wish all of them to be in sharp focus, or if you're looking at an animal face on, such as this little bear here, where you want the eyes and the nose to be sharp. If there's a problem, consider backing up, using less magnification, and crop if necessary in post. If comparing two telephoto lenses of the same focal length, the one with the shortest minimum focusing distance is capable of capturing larger images than the other, because you can move closer to your subject and still be able to focus on it. Teleconverters are comprised of a series of lens elements. They're usually relatively small. They fit between the camera body and the lens itself. The early ones were not particularly sharp. The 1.4 teleconverter would take a 400 millimeter lens, make it act like a 560. You lose light when you do this. It cuts your shutter speeds by a half, but some of those were pretty sharp. 2x teleconverters or doublers, I never was happy with any of them. And they also cause light loss. In fact, up to 4 times. You cut your shutter speed by a factor of 4. Most of today's teleconverters for mirrorless lenses are capable of producing extremely sharp images. Just remember, they still result in light loss and some slower shutter speeds. A problem with long telephoto lenses happens to be their size and weight, but more than that, it makes it harder for you to locate and lock on a subject in the field, particularly flying birds. There's a couple things you can do about it. Number one, you can look at your lens and see if it has a focus range limiter, and you can set it up for distant shots, for instance, 5 or 6 meters to infinity as opposed from its closest focusing distance out. This reduces the amount of travel for the lens internal elements to reach their final destination. You also could try focusing on something roughly the same distance away as the subject, maybe just the waterline beneath it, tree line, branch, etc. Then you can move the lens into position and hopefully can see the subject. Using a zoom lens, locate the subject with a wider view, then zoom in on it. Zoom lenses sometimes were talked about negatively compared to prime lenses, and zoom lenses would be something like a 200 to a 500, a 100 millimeter to a 400 millimeter, and the 180 to 600 is very popular right now. The newer ones are certainly sharper and lighter than the original ones. They could be slightly slower acquiring focus. They have a smaller maximum aperture. Instead of maybe having an f4 as the maximum aperture, they may be a 5.6, a 6.3, etc. They also may be bulkier than the prime lens of similar focal length. And they may not be as sharp edge to edge, depends on which one you happen to have. However, they are definitely useful for the versatility, particularly if you're shooting from a fixed position such as a blind or a safari vehicle. When you are not able to move any closer to your subject, you can vary the composition from headshots to environmental shots. Wide-angle lenses in wildlife photography, yes, they can be used. They show more of the environment around the subject. You saw that with the very first picture when I opened up this program. They stretch apparent distances from front to back, and they make background objects appear smaller than what we see with the eyes. And both of these things help create a sense of depth in the photo. Since they offer less magnification than the longer lenses, you also have some more depth of field to work with. Here we have a desert bighorn sheep in Utah, and the image shows the vast terrain that this and steep terrain that this animal has to navigate on a regular basis. The lower picture just is a nice picture of an overall scene of a small colony of king penguins in the Falkland Islands, where the one is kind of keeping guard on the rest. Wide-angle lenses can be used to exaggerate the size of objects that are closest to them, making them look larger than life. In the case of this albatross chick, I was shooting with a wide-angle lens, and it helped emphasize its long wing. And those long wings will be necessary when it becomes an adult and spends years flying over the ocean before it returns to land to breed. Macro lenses are designed for close focusing and high magnification, and many can enlarge images up to a 1-to-1 reproduction ratio. They're sharp edge to edge, perspective corrected, and they come in varying focal lengths. As you can see here, there's a 55, a 200 millimeter, and a 105. And there's some differences between them. The longer focal length macro lenses, such as the 200, provide greater working distance from your subject. That means less disturbance of the animal and a safer working distance, particularly if you don't like spiders like me. They also help avoid your shadow falling on the subject, which can scare it away. The shorter macro lenses, like the 55, 65, see more of the background and the area around the subject, and they could be good for showing their environment, but they might make it harder to isolate the subject. Just a comment about dragons and butterflies. Often you're going to find yourself using a macro lens that may be 100 or 200 millimeters. Note that dragonflies and butterflies return to the same plant or area time after time, so this gives you a good opportunity to prepare for their arrival. Remember, sharp eyes. Notice that butterfly. If the eyes aren't sharp, the rest of the image is not going to appear sharp. Lens collars. A lot of people don't talk about these, but they do have some benefits. They surround the lens and easily hold it and allow you to mount the lens collar onto your tripod head as opposed to mounting the camera directly. This makes the system more stable, puts less strain on the camera body. Also, you can see that knob there. You can loosen that knob and rotate the lens camera body combination to make it easier to switch from horizontal to vertical orientation or anywhere in between. And that is the end of this presentation. I hope you got some ideas from it that you can use in your photography outdoors. Now that spring is here, you want to get out there and shoot. Next topics that are going to be coming up are autofocus and number of frames per second. These two shots were certainly shot at a high number of frames per second. We have these dancing, what I call my dancing ibis. My website is listed above. If you go to it, you can find a list of Zoom programs for camera clubs. You can find my blogs, which discuss camera techniques or locations, and you also find my updated schedule of workshops and tours. The two links below, the first link happens to give you access to where you can sign up for my newsletter. It's free, it comes out maybe every 2 months. The second link there is basically so you can see the rest of these YouTube channel presentations. And the QR code will also take you right to where you can sign up for the newsletter. And again, I hope you enjoyed the program. I hope you sign up and subscribe. And I'll see you again in another month. Thank you so much.